Hi everyone, Jay Egersdorff here talking about Game Week 27 on the Fantasy Premier League. What an absolute disaster Game Week 26 was for a lot of managers. I know some people got a bit of fortune in the Sunday game, the Liverpool game with Salah. If they had them as captain, that was obviously a good move. He got quite a few points. But in the main, one of those game weeks that's a really unusual one. Lots of things happened that nobody really predicted, and it therefore had a big impact on a lot of FPL managers. I myself was really fearing the worst when I checked my team on Tuesday morning after all the updates had gone through, and I'd found that I'd only dropped about 200 places to 1,000 and something overall. So not a huge disaster, given I was really nervous about how the impact might be. So clearly across the board, lots of FPL managers have found it a really tough game week. So I've had lots of people making contact with me, tweeting me, going, help, I've had an awful game week, my team's terrible, it's an absolute disaster, shall I take a points hit? I've done a rage transfer. This rage transfer thing has sort of come a term that's been coined this season. What even is a rage transfer? It seems madness to me. Why would you make a decision just out of anger, not out of logic and prediction? Given that FPL as a game is a prediction-based game, so you need to make decisions based on the highest probability of an outcome, given the stats you know, given the knowledge that you have of football, given the form and the fixtures and all these things that come into play when you make your decision. So I'm going to talk this week a bit about that and a bit about my FPL strategy as a way of hopefully giving you guys a remedy as to how to approach Game Week 27 on the back of a really tough Game Week 26. So what we need to understand, all FPL is, like I've said, is a prediction game, but you have to imagine it as a roulette wheel. So on that wheel, there are different slots where the ball could go, and you are making predictions every week. Every little decision that you make is almost like a spin of that roulette wheel. So if you make a pretty straightforward decision, let's say you put Harry Kane or Salah as in your team or as your captain, they're one of the best players on the game. That's pretty much like making a red or black or an odds or even decision on a roulette wheel. It's pretty sturdy, pretty safe. It's probably going to be low risk, and compared to all the other managers in the league who will probably have those players as well, comparably low reward. So it's not going to throw you up the scoring charts loads, but it's not going to impact you loads because everybody's in the same boat. So that's fairly low risk, low reward. If you make Kane or Salah your captain when they have an easier fixture, so let's say they have Huddersfield at home and you put them in your team, it's still a kind of red or black decision, but let's say you're betting on black, that slot actually gets wider than the red one, so your probability again for them to get some points is enhanced even further. So likewise at the other end of the scale, if you bet on, let's say this week you put Ramsey in your team and you put him as captain, there's two decisions there that are probably quite unlikely compared to a red or black decision. That's like saying I'm going to bet on, say, numbers 1 to 5 on a roulette wheel and see if they come in. If you then put Ramsey as captain, it's almost like betting on just one number, and it's almost a bit like a gut feel, because who really thought Ramsey wasn't nailed on to start on Saturday, and who really thought that Arsenal were going to put 5 goals and he would get 3? I don't think he's ever scored a career hat-trick. So that is basically like picking a roulette wheel and picking a number and kind of saying, I'm picking number 2 and it's because it's my lucky number. That is a gut prediction. That is not really a calculated, balanced, well thought out risk and reward prediction. But of course the upside to that is if you nail it and you get it right, just like on the game of roulette, you get a lot more chips, you get a lot more points in FPL, and the risk is higher, the reward is higher. Not many other people have Ramsey, and guess what? You shoot up through the rankings and it increases your overall rank. Of course, there's a problem with that kind of strategy, in my opinion. If you play the game that kind of aggressively, it's going to mean that over time you're taking too many risks, and consequently you're going to run out of lives. Just like going to the casino and putting all your money on number 2 every single time, or all your money on numbers 1 to 10, something like that. Eventually it might get you a lot of chips to start with, but at some point you're probably going to lose quite a lot. Hope that makes sense, the logic where I'm going with that one. Again, you can comfort yourself in game week 26. I've just taken a look through the fixtures and I picked one strange thing that happened in every single one of the games at weekend. The Sterling miss from 2 yards, the miss of the season. Wilson at Bournemouth blanked despite being on brilliant form with a brilliant fixture. Brighton and Hove Albion scored 3 goals in one match. Mahrez didn't turn up for Leicester. Sanchez missed a penalty and got booked. Phil Jones got dropped and Pogba was on the bench. Who saw any of those things happening? West Brom and Southampton, very dull teams, fought out a 5-goal thriller. Arsenal put 5 past Big Sam's Everton. Big Sam, the most defensive coach in the league. Milosevic, I think I've said that wrong, but the guy at Crystal Palace scored another penalty. How many penalties have they got in a season? Versus, let's say, Tottenham with Harry Kane. A bad example because he got 2 on Saturday, but prior to that, I don't think they'd had any, or maybe 1. Spurs Liverpool, 2 injury time goals. Harry Kane misses a penalty. Harry Kane scores a penalty. What are the probability on that is crazy. And then finally, Chelsea 1 and Watford 4, and Alonso is mysteriously injured on the day of the game. Heavily owned by a lot of FPL managers. Again, who saw that coming? So if you've had a bad game week, you need to relax. You need to not panic. You need to play the game consistently. So my experience, I've played this game a long time. I've had, if I do so myself, a brilliant track record, never finished outside the top 14k, and experience tells me that to win and do well at FPL you need 3 things. You need consistency, you need predictability, so that's taking the bets that have a predictable likelihood to result in a good outcome, and you need to be above average. Those 3 things are what you need: consistency, predictability, and being above average. If you've got those things, you'll do well at FPL. The other thing as well, if you're in a high position, if you're in the top 100 or the top 1,000 or whatever it might be, there are literally millions of people behind you in the overall rankings. So the ratio of people behind you to people that you can catch up is tiny, the amount of people that can catch you. And because of the sequence and the outcomes and the numbers of different events that can happen in football, the likelihood of you getting a downward arrow, a red arrow, when you're already in a high part of the overall rankings already, is so much higher. So again, you don't need to worry so much about that in one of these funny game weeks. You probably need to worry about that when all the predictable things, so Kane, Aguero, Man United clean sheet, all these things that we'd expect would happen in a lot of game weeks happen, and your team still goes down. It probably suggests you've got the wrong lineup. You need to make some transfers. So we talked about low risk, talked about high risk. We talked about the probability bit. You've got to play the percentages. So with that all in mind, I think that this week, unless you've got some major surgery in your team, I don't think there's been any major injuries this week. Just sit on your transfer. Your team's probably pretty good. It's had a bad game week 26. Would I rush out and buy Mkhitaryan? No, he's not got great fixtures. They've had a one-off game where he performed really well. I don't think there's wholesale need to go make wholesale change and knee-jerk reaction. If it's me and there's no major problems, I'd sit tight. I think captains is a bit tough this week. Kane at home to Arsenal. Aguero's got Leicester. I don't know about rotation. Salah on form. They've all got away ties in the Champions League in midweek, but Salah has no FA Cup game the weekend after. So will that improve his minutes in the Premier League game at weekend? Could well be. The guy's bang on fire. So maybe I said it last week, lean towards him, and I didn't pick him myself, but that would probably be the consistent choice. So I hope that's been valuable. Have a great game week. Thanks for all your comments and your tweets, and thanks as ever for all your support. Cheers.